Okay, so I powered on both my machines, and I'm just going to continue where I left off. So we created this login page. We've got a login for both the admin and for members. Admin, if I type in addmin, and then the password is p@ss. Login, I'm in the admin section. If I come back over here, I type in user, user, with the password of same password p@ss. I go into my members area. So the problem with this style of login is these pages, like my members and my admin page, the only thing that is securing them is obscurity. So for example, if I were to close my browser and then for the very first time go to this website, I just paste the URL in, and go to that website, nothing is preventing me from just browsing to it. So the only thing that's preventing anybody from getting here is the fact they don't know to type in member.php. So we need it to be better than this. We really want to secure it. So if somebody goes to member.php without logging in first, we then would want to be returned to the login screen. So we want to secure that. So the way I would do this is through session, and that's the most common way of doing it. You type in a username, you type in a password, you log in, and at that point we set a session, and then we can move forward from there. So the way that I would do this is I would go directly to my login index page, and then right here is where we really did our logic, where we've got the username, got the password, we redirect them. If not, the username and the password, we redirect them. So for right now, I'm only going to focus on the admin part. And what I want to do is I want to set up a session variable here. And in order to use a session variable, I'm just going to say session start. And that one line there has to be the very first line. It has to be before anything else. The session start, well, the very first line after you open up the PHP block. If you had HTML somewhere before here, then that would be bad. All right, so you don't want that. So I always make the very first tight part up to the screen PHP, and then right after I open that PHP, I do my session start. And the reason for that is the session start basically gets loaded into the head area of the HTTP packet. The body is all of the markup, and even if we were to do an echo before doing the session start, we would write to the body portion of the packet, which would close the head section. So we really need that head section to be open. All right, so the head section is open. We do our session start. Now we can start using session variables. So I'm only going to focus on admin. I'm just going to pretend the whole user part doesn't exist yet, because we're going to rework this to use a database. And when we use a database, this will all be kind of tied in together. So now I can do a $_ and then session is one of my options. And I'm just going to make up something, the key that I'm going to make up, I'm just going to have it be the UID. All right, and that's the user's ID. And for right now, I'm just going to hard code 1 in as the user ID. All right, so what would really happen in the real world is we would query a database and we would check the username and the password against the database credentials. And then at that point, we would return that user information. And the user has like an account ID or a user ID that the user probably doesn't even know, they're not aware of, but that is what would be loaded into the session. So at this point, the admin now has a session. That's my user ID. So what I would do is I need to remember that. This is going to be my... So on the admin page, the very first thing I'm going to do before I do anything, let's get to the top. And then I'm going to make a PHP block. And then inside that PHP block, I just want to know, hey, is there a session for this user? If the session exists, the user's logged in, life is good. If the session doesn't exist, then we need them to log in. So I'm just going to do an if statement, and I'm just basically going to do what we've done many times before, is using that is set. And specifically what I want to do is I just want to see if the UID is set. It doesn't have to be set to any type of number. You know, we don't care what it's set to, but the only way that this session ID could be set is if they went through the login page successfully. Because at that point, we are then loading the user ID with that specific user's unique identifier. And what this is doing is if it's set, then they can see the page. If it's not set, then we're going to redirect them back to the login page. But now this page has that user ID, so if we wanted to, maybe we wanted to pull up like user-specific information, we could do that on this page. Okay, so if it's not set, so I use the exclamation point there to say not. So if it's not set, then we're going to use that header, and we're going to set our location. And we're going to make that equal to index.php. So at that point, then they'll be redirected to login. On some of the pages, I hold all of the variables I need for the page, and I just do an include. So sometimes login logic is tied into an include that I just throw on every one of the members pages. In this example, we really only have 2 pages. In the real world, I would just do something like this. So now if I were going to go /members.php, it automatically pops me back here because I'm not logged in. If I were going to go admin.php, automatically pops me back here. But if I were to log in, oh, looks like I've got an error. addmemp@ss. Oh, maybe I didn't save that. So I don't see my error message. So I actually think I popped over and then came back. So let me just walk through. If the username is admin and the password's pass, oh, see what's happening? We're redirecting before we're setting the session. So that's bad. Because then we hit the admin PHP page, the session wasn't set, so then it kicked us back. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move that below. So we're going to set up our session is equal to 1, and then we're going to redirect. So let's try this one more time. So order of execution does matter. So I've got admin, pass, all right, so let's walk through it a little bit more. I'm definitely here. UID is equal to 1. going over to admin.php, coming into admin is set. Oh, we can't use a session if we don't do a session start. Our session start has to be in there in order to use sessions. So any page of sessions being used to either read or write, we have to do a session start, which that means we have to do that on the members page as well. All right, third time's a charm. Admin, pass. Yay! So now we're here. So at least we know our logic's working. If I go to a different page and then go back over to admin, because that session variable's been set, we're good until the session variable expires. So if they're moving around, that session variable will stay active. After 20 minutes of inactivity, then it actually would expire. So one of those things that if you really need to deal with that, you'll have to have a logout. Otherwise, what would happen is they would click on a link and then automatically get popped to the login page, which, I don't know, that's very common as well. So if you're at a bank, they warn you and tell you that you're getting logged out. A lot of other sites just let the session die, and you click on a link and then all of a sudden you're back at the login. I think Blackboard does it that way. Okay, so we're logged in, we're here. Now, security-wise, we have to think about this because an admin has different permissions than a member. And our logic right now is very simple because we're just like in the beginning part of it. But if a member logs in and they have a session variable, we wouldn't want them, if they were clever enough, to type in admin and then be able to automatically get into the admin section just because they knew the URL. So there is something called permission escalation, which this would be an example of. If somebody just made it so either you're a member or not a member, but different roles have different levels of security. So we would need to actually deal with that. As we build up this infrastructure, we'll start to dig into that. But for right now, I wanted to just kind of go over sessions and how if the user was not logged in, they didn't have the session, and then once they were logged in, they then had that session. So what I want to do is I want to start to tie this into a database. So I'm just going to go Shift, and I'm going to type in data. And I see database, so I'm going to click on that. And then it's over here, so I'm going to pull that out. I must have just pushed it in. Okay, so I've got one table here called movie title, or movie list is my. So what I want to do is I want to add another table, and I'm actually gonna just create like I think I'm just gonna call it member login, and in member login I want to create a couple columns here. The first one I'm just going to call it member ID. It's going to be an integer. I'm going to make it unique, auto increment, and a primary key. And then the next one, I'm just going to have full name. So I'm just going to call it member. Actually, member name. That's going to be var char. Member name, I don't know, probably 75 characters. And then I'm going to have an email address, member email. And I'm going to do another varchar. I'm going to do 255. Some people have some really long email addresses. Member. Oops. Okay, so I want a member password. And so we could do a role. So we could do a role as a varchar. and hold that in is like maybe admin, member, operator. But the way I'm going to do this, I'm actually going to do this the right way. I'm going to do role ID, and that's going to be an integer. And I'm going to do one more. I'm just going to create something called member key. And MEMB. Okay, member key. And I'm going to do that as a string or a varchar. And I'm going to do that as 255 is going to be my key. So what I like to do is I like to create a member key if this is going to be something that's going to be maybe using an API where each member would maybe have access to remote procedure calls. It's going to be something we're going to be doing in a couple of weeks, so I figure let's just build the table right. The other thing is we're going to get into hashing passwords, and when we do that, it's nice to have a key that we can use to salt the password. So, and I'll talk about that more in a little bit. For right now, just know we're going to stick a key in there. It's going to be something random that each member will have their own random key. So I think that's good for right now. I'm just going to execute this. Password's password. Okay, so I've got my member login. And the one thing that I do want to bring up is I have this role ID. So I'm just going to create a new table. And I'm just going to call it role. And I'm going to make something called role ID. It's going to be an integer. I'm going to make it auto increment. It's going to be unique. It's going to be a primary key. And then I'm going to create another one, role value. And this one is going to be a varchar. And the role value will be either operator, admin, or member. For right now, those are our main roles. I'm just going to put 50 in here for now. I don't think we'll have a role greater than 50 characters. It can't be null. We have to have some role value. So I'm just going to execute this. And then, so my role ID, capital RID, is a primary key on the role table. Within our member login, there is the role ID here, which actually is a foreign key. Now, I didn't set my key constraints up, but that's really what this is going to be. So over here, I'm just going to double click on the role, and I want to add a new value in here. So I'm just going to hit the little plus. So we have an admin, AD, MIN is one of the roles. I could make them all uppercase, all lowercase. I'm just going to use regular case here. I'm going to hit the plus. Role value cannot be null. Oh, I didn't commit, I guess. So I've got admin, I have operator. And hit enter, so that way I commit it. So it's no longer selected, and then I'm going to hit the plus. And then I'm going to do a member. Okay, so instead of hitting the plus, I can right click on it and I can do submit new row, I could have done the plus. I would have gotten the 4 and then just never committed the 4, which would have been fine too. So some people call this a control table. It's just a way of tying together a unique identifier with another member field. So for example, within our member table, we have different members. We can have their name, their email address, their password, and then their role. So let's say they're an operator. Well, the word operator, O-P-E-R-A-T-O-R, is 8 digits, all right? And let's say we've got 1,000 members in this database. Well, now you're doing 8 times, 1,000, so now we've got 8,000 digits that are being consumed within the database table, where we could just have one digit. We could have 1, 2, or 3. So we could have just that single integer or that single number representing an 8-digit value. So it makes things more efficient. And the other thing it does is it gives you something called data integrity. You don't have to worry about people misspelling operator. You don't have to worry about people having different case values for admin. So they're selecting it off of a list. And actually, our list over here, if I go to that member area, no, not the member, the admin area, we've got a list here. This could actually be getting pulled from that table. So the other thing this does is it gives you the ability to make your application more dynamic. So all of a sudden, 6 months from now, your boss comes in and says, hey, we've got an observer role. We would like people to just be able to observe the content, not be able to add it, not be able to edit it or delete it. They just have to be able to see it. So if we had it all in a database, we would just go back over here, and then within our roles, we would just add an observer, and then that could automatically repopulate this list, so that way somebody new comes in, they could be an observer. So it just adds more dynamic scalability when you're dealing with application design. So there's a whole class just on databases, so I don't want to go too deep into that. I want to give you enough to be dangerous, and I think that's where we're at. Okay, so now we have the part where we want to be able to insert this data into our database. So let's work on that. So I'm going to focus in on this admin page, and I want to be able to do an insert statement. So if I go to my admin page, now I'm not dynamically pulling the table to create this select. We could, and maybe we should. If you wanted to, I would encourage it. But for right now, I do know I have admin as a 1, operator as a 2, member as a 3. So, and I've got 1, 2, and 3 because that's my database design. If I go over to my role here, admin is a 1, operator is a 2, and member is a 3. So I'm just matching the database for right now. Later on, I may just go through and make that dynamic, just loop through every record in the table, and then insert this data in here. From the previous assignment, I feel fairly confident that you guys could do that with the movie list, where you just do a select star on the role table, loop through, and then dynamically create those records. So I feel confident we could do that. But for right now, I really want to focus in on the security parts of this and really get this to all get inserted. So we've got our first name, we've got our email address, we've got our password, and then if our passwords match, we have a role, and then we're going to insert that in. So what I'm going to do is inside this PHP block, I want to know if they hit the submit button. So what I'm going to do is this submit button here, I'm going to add in a name And I'm just going to call the name of it submit. By doing that, my submit button now has got something that's being passed over. So if I move this from a post to a get and save it, and if I refresh the page, now my submit button has a name that we don't see, but it is there, kind of like all of these have names now. So I'm just going to type in anything here. I'm just going to hit random keys because none of them matter at this point. And I'm going to hit add new member. So if I take a look, I now see that I've got to submit. And it is equal to add new member. So I've got a new parameter or a new variable that's up inside that URL string. So my submit button now has a value in it. So this is what I normally do. I'm going to switch this back over to a post. That's what I normally do just to see if somebody actually clicked the button. So I'm just going to do an if statement. And then this if statement is going to basically fire off if somebody clicked the button. So I'm going to do an is set. And I'm going to do my post again. And what I want to know is the submit button has a name called submit. So if the submit button has been pressed, this will be true. The submit button will have been set. Just going to tab this in a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to echo just to make sure everything's what I expect it to be. We are here. And then I'm going to exit. Make sure I put a semicolon at the end of that line. And I'm going to save it. And if I refresh, I'm here. So I'm just going to type in anything at this point. We are here. So I hit my submit button and we're here. Now, all of that was just junk from last time. I go to my login, addmin, login. I'm in my admin. Nothing's up there. None of this is being validated. So we are here. I know they hit that submit button. So at this point, I can start to do stuff. So what I want to do is I want to check to make sure that the full name has been set. So I'm going to check this server side. I can definitely check it client side by using the required. HTML5 has a required. So all modern browsers now, if they don't type it in, it will flag them that that's a required field. But I can also check it server side just in case, because some people may be jerks and try to circumvent it, or they may have an older browser. So I'm just going to do an if statement because I don't want to have bad data in my database, because that's the worst. All right, so in my if statement, I'm just going to check if something is set. I'm going to use my post. And this is going to be first name. So if it's set, I'm going to do a $sign fn name is going to be equal to, so I'm just going to set local variables. Else, this is where the trick comes in, if it's not, then I'm going to set up my error message, ERRMSG is going to be equal to first name is required, or name is required. And if they screwed up, I'm just going to call a return, which is going to jump completely out of this function. So error message, I'm going to go way up to the top here. And I'm just going to set my error message variable up as a blank string, so that way it's automatically blank. And then I'm going to do the same thing I did before, where I had my top of my form right up here. I'm just going to do an H3. Oops. And I'm going to do the ID. I'm going to make that equal to error. So that way we get the red. And then I'm going to do my PHP block here with my error message. So that way I can report out the error message. Now, just to test it, I'm going to remove the required. Just so that way I can actually do it, have it submit up to the server, have the server catch the error message. So it's going to come in, yes, they click the button. Has it been set? No, we didn't type anything in. Fill in the error message, kick out, so that way nothing else will fire. So we shouldn't see the echo, we shouldn't see the exit. So I'm just going to refresh. I'm going to retry, I'm going to resubmit that. Alright, so I'm going to go back, go to login, admin, login. First name is going to be blank, so I'm going to add new member. And we are here. Alright, I'm going to comment this out for right now. So I don't type anything in, add new member. Oh, is set, because it is actually being set. So is set is different than if it is blank. Or empty, sorry. So what's going on is set is checking to see if there's actually a parameter in the URL. If the parameter is in the URL, then it has been set. But if there's no value in the URL, so if it's empty, then I could use the not, but I'm going to flip it just because I think it's easier to read this way, because the logic's actually backwards. Yeah, there is a difference between is set and empty. I'm going to save this. Okay, so it is empty. Why am I exiting? Okay, name is required. All right, so I guess the return is doing the same thing as the exit. I guess it's returning out of the PHP, which is stopping the flow. All right, so our message is blank. Our message is set. If they did type it in, then it wouldn't be. So what I want to do is I just want to do, okay, so I want to quickly go back to the is set versus empty because I kind of went over that quickly. On my form, I'm going to switch it from a post back to a get. I'm going to save it. I'm going to submit. So I'm going to submit this. Oh, I needed to refresh it. Okay, so if I look at first name, I'm going to put that in the notepad so that way it's a little bit easier to read. Wow. Let's try opening up Notepad again. Okay, so at this point, I did an is set to see if the submit button was pressed. So was this set? Yes, it is set. It's set equal to add a new member. All right. So then what I did is I did not fill in the first name, and I did an is set on fname, on txt fname. Well, it came back as yes, it is set because it's in the URL. If I would have done like an is set on txt bob, that would not have been set because it's not inside of here. If txt bob was in here, then it would have been set. But an empty is like, well, is there a value associated with first name? So the empty would actually say, yes, it is empty because there is no value. So empty is different than is set. Is set's really just checking to see, is there a value that has been submitted to the server? So if I didn't fill in a value, txt fname is set. It's just set to an empty string. So this actually would be the equivalent of doing something like this. So is set is set. It's just set to nothing. Now if I would have done an empty, then it would have been empty. So that's the difference between empty and is set. And you need to just make sure that you want to use the correct one at the correct time. And sometimes it's just kind of playing around with it like we just did, and like, oh wow, why did that happen? You know. So that's where all of a sudden we would use empty. If it's empty, then we know it's required. Now the easy way of fixing it client side is just over here for txt fname to add in the attribute required. But again, we still have hackers and people with really old browsers. So now if I refresh this page and I try submitting it, now HTML5 kicks in and says, hey, this is required. So it's almost like doing it with JavaScript client side, but it's not, you know. So type something in, hit it, went up to the server, life is good, because I didn't get an error message. So I'm just going to keep on going down here. All right, so first name, next one's going to be my email address is going to be required. So I'm going to, again, add in the requireds for the client side portion of it, which is different than the server side. So I'm going to do exactly the same if statement here. I'm going to grab a hold of the post, and I'm going to look at txt email, error message email is required, and then email is going to go into $email. So I'm just going to create a local variable called email that's going to hold my email. So I'm going to do this again. And now instead of email, so I've got first name, email, password. Oops, actually I want to keep that txt password. Password. Is required. txt password. Okay, so then the next thing I want to do is I'm just going to verify the passwords match. So I'm just going to do an if statement. And I want to check, does this password match? Is it equal to? Now these two would match. Those two would be exactly the same because I just pulled it out of that and put it into there. So those are matching. But the other one is password 2. If I scroll down, I can see the retype password is txt password 2. So I'm going to check the server side password 2 against the passwords. So if those do not match, then we've got a problem. So I'm just going to put in an error message saying passwords do not match. A couple exclamation points. Okay. And then the role. So it would be really hard to mess up the role, but I'm going to just do it anyways. I'm going to do another if statement just like the one above here. And my role has a name of txt role. And again, somebody would actually have to be trying to actively hack the system to hit this message because it's a drop down. And then my $sign role. So at this point, we validated everything. The way I would handle this is I would do an if statement. And I would just check the error message and say if the error message is equal to a blank string, then we'll do our database work. To verify it, I'm just going to fill in the error message temporarily to do SQL work. So I'm just going to save that. So I'm just going to test this here. So HTML5 caught this. Joe Wetzel. And it looks like I did not refresh my page. So I'm going to go back over to my login. Let's verify that really quick. I think I did switch that back over to a post. I just don't think it refreshed. Oh no, I didn't. So I'm going to switch my method back over to post. I'm going to save that. And admin, login. So we're getting a 500 error. 500 error, that's bad. That means that something is critically wrong within our code. So I can see admin has got a red underline. The easiest way to really dig into error messages is if you go into your tools, oh, sorry, it's under code, inspect code, and then I'm going to just do the whole project. I'm just going to run it. So it's going to give me a code inspector. If I come over here, I can group by severity, which is really the thing I care about. And it looks like I've got 3 errors going on. The 3 general errors. Oh, Magic 8 Ball's got an error. Missing a closing tag. And then over here I've got 1 syntactical error in my admin. And I'm missing a semicolon on line 41. So if I double click on it, it takes me there. Okay, so it was the last line of code that I wrote. I just missed a semicolon. Notice how the red lines went away underneath that. So I'm just going to minimize that. I'm going to save it. I'm going to refresh. That looks better. Okay, so now I probably should have done the required for the passwords as well, but this is a good test here. So I'm just going to type in something. Passwords have not been filled in. Add new member. Password is required. So I'll type in password, but then I'm going to type in something different. So my passwords shouldn't match. Passwords do not match. So I'm going to fill in these boxes because I am getting the values. I'm placing them in local variables here. So I've got like fname is filled in. So as I'm working on it, I can kind of feel that it feels clunky here. So for the input for my txt fname, it's going to add a value. I'm going to make that PHP. I'm going to do the same thing here for the email. Passwords. Well, I can do it. Actually, I'm not going to do it for passwords. And the roles don't matter. So that will at least give it a little bit better of a feel. So if I refresh this, retry it. Okay, so password, I'm going to type in Bob, and that's going to be an admin. Do SQL work. So everything was filled in correctly. So at that point, we'll do our insert statement. All right, so I'm gonna go over to my movie list, and I'm gonna go over to my add movie add. We're gonna do the same thing as we did here. So we did that include, we did our try catch, we did an insert into movies, we filled in those parameters, we executed it. So this database stuff from here to here, within movie add.php is a good thing to have. So if I copy this and I go back over into my admin area, it's going to paste that in. So I've got my username, password, all of that's been included inside that connection. So I want to insert into, and this is going to be my members login table. So here's my members login table. So I'm going to insert into member. I keep on saying members, it's singular, member login. And the fields that I need are going to be member ID is an auto increment, so I don't need that. I've got my member name. Member email. Comma. Member password. Comma. Role ID. And then a member key. So I'm going to copy all of these. So those are the fields, and underneath the values, I'm just going to paste them inside the values area. But what I'm going to do is everywhere where there's the member, I'm going to take the word member off, and I'm just going to put a colon in there. So it's going to be colon name, colon email. Those are going to be my placeholders. Colon password, colon ID, colon key. Alright, so then I've got my parameters here, so I'm just going to slide this over for now. So I've got name, I've got email, I'm going to copy this line, put it below. After email, it's password. And then I see I did ID. That's actually a little bit confusing. I'm just going to go capital R, RID. Just that way, hopefully I can figure out that's the role ID. Let me add one more. Bind value. After bind ID, we've got our key. Okay, so now our variables come into play. So we've got our txt, or no, it's actually a $FN name. That's what we did here. Then we've got our $email. Then we've got our password. Then we've got our role ID. Password, role. Then we've got our key. We didn't actually create a key yet, so I'm just going to put a bunch of X's in here just to denote that's going to be a key that we're going to create. So I'm just going to save this. I'm going to see if this will work. So first name is going to be Joe Wetzel. My email address. Password. Doesn't really matter, does it? I'm going to type in a password. I'm going to select a role, a member. Actually, let's make myself an admin. Okay, so just pop back. I don't really know if it really worked, but if I come over to my member login, do a refresh. Okay, so I see member ID 1, my role is 1, my key, my password did not get saved. So I got to think about that a little bit, member password. So for my password, I put an int in there. So when I created the table, I actually screwed up. So I'm going to go back over here. My member password shouldn't have been an integer. I'm going to modify the column. I should have had a varchar. And my password, I'm just going to make it 255 for the paranoid people. I'm going to execute that. And I'm going to just delete that one record because the password isn't there. So I'm just going to delete the row. And I'm going to go back over here. The other thing is I probably should have put something at the top saying successfully added to the database and then wiped this information out. So now let's see if my password's in there. Okay, so I've got my dev123. All right, and the key is in there. Okay, and then I've got record 2 because it's an auto increment. Okay, so what I would do at this point is clear this and say successfully written. So I'm on my admin. Member added to base. All right, so then I've got a variable name. I'm just going to clear my variables out so that way the form won't fill in with the last user. All right, so I'm going to just take a look at this one more time here. If I go to login, go to admin. Okay, so come over here. Yeah, that doesn't matter. I was going to delete the record out, but I can leave it in there. I can just do a different user. And I'm going to make him a member. So Bob Smith, member added to database. That's a good sign. If I come over here, Go to my members table, refresh it. Okay, so I see Bob Smith, everything's good. Password is Big Smith. His role is 3. So right now we're not using the member key, but right now I think this is actually a good breaking point. We'll come back in the next video. We'll deal more with the security and then tying the logins to make them work correctly.